Hey everyone, it is Friday, and it is the fifth and final installment of our week-long pounding on Expand the Ban, immigration, moratorium, all of the issues that you want to be talked about, right? On corporate media, but get so little attention. So we've had a great week with many incredible and well-informed guests, but I wanted to end the week with one of my favorite, fiercest heroines, one of the most brilliant women I know and have encountered in my journalism career. Her name is Sara Blackwell. She's the godmother, she's the guardian angel of American workers. And we're going to talk about and assess the current situation in the swamp and everything related to this immigration ban that has really just covered a fraction of the problem and completely exempted temporary foreign workers who have done so much damage and wrought so much havoc on our economy, on our best and brightest workers. So I'm going to bring her in right now. She is in Florida, and let's see. There we go. Hey, Sara, how are you doing?
How are you doing?
Good to see you. So I need you to boost my spirits, but I also need you to give everybody a reality check on where we are. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. You know, if you've got to be quarantined in Sarasota, Florida, where it's sunny every day and beaches, it's not so bad. So that part's okay. Teaching from home kids is challenging. I actually just do their homework for them because I'm just not going to teach them. Seriously over my shoulder. But other than that, just trying to stay in the fight and not get discouraged, which, like it's hard to get to keep fighting and not get discouraged over here on these issues, because it feels like every time we think we're going to win, we get a tweet that, from Trump that he's going to do a ban. Like, oh my gosh, everybody's blowing up and excited. And I mean, he should see how excited everyone got. And then it wasn't anything. And you're like, oh, of course, it's like that kick in the gut. But, that we want our voices heard. And I think this is a great way. Thank you so much for having me here and for using your voice for the last week, because your voice is amazing and it gets out there. And I have to say one little story. The other day, I told my son I was going to be on your show, and he saw who you were, and he was like, "You're famous, Mom." After that, now my son thinks I'm famous because I'm like,
Well, you are so well known in the American workers community for your work for the Disney workers and Abbott and AT&T and all of the exposés. You were on Tucker Carlson a couple of months ago talking about this. And so I know that, and I featured you in Sold Out. So, you have just been, really a torchbearer for American workers and relentlessly so. And, what I love about you is you have no holds barred. You're not going to candy coat, sugarcoat the truth about all of these matters. And the truth is, now that we have 36.5 million Americans out of work, and large numbers of them, of course, in the sector that you deal with. And yet, as you referenced, this so-called immigration ban doesn't even touch any of these pipelines, chief among them, H-1B. How do you explain that?
Bad leadership, I guess. I think that if we need Americans to know what's going on. And I think we've come a long way with educating Americans as to the truth and what's actually happening. There are Americans available to do the job. And now at this point, that lie isn't even feasible for anyone to believe. But we also, after getting Americans educated, we have to get them out there and ready to fight and to show that maybe we don't have billions of dollars and we can't fund your campaign, but we matter. And, this is America. And we only have one country that, to work. And the people coming over, they have two. And they have two options. They can work in their country or our country, and I just feel like we need to protect our country. And if we don't keep our country strong, there will be nowhere for foreigners to come in and be able to have jobs. And so there are so many multiple reasons why this issue is important. And I just think getting the message out there, getting more Americans educated, and, finding that in with the administration right now and with the Congress and anyone elected, and showing them the light of what's truth, what's really going on. And I think that, like, President Trump loves America. If he knew what was going on and he went back to his original agenda with immigration, I think he would really do a lot and would really make a big difference. But we've just got to make our voices heard, and we've got to find a way in to get that message to the people that matter.
Absolutely. Tell me what you're hearing from American workers. You've got a huge network across the country of people who've given you tips, who keep in touch with you and let you know what's going on. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I'm sort of the lifeline of people who are going through things. They call and sometimes want legal advice, but mainly just want to tell their story, or they're upset and they don't know who to go to for help. Right now, there are a lot of companies that are firing a lot of Americans, and they're keeping their foreign visa holders. And if you look at it from the employer's point of view, if they fire the foreign visa holder, they have to report it, and then they have to let the foreign visa holder go, and then that person's in the country for however long until they might have to go back. And then if they want to rehire them, that company has to redo paperwork and do all this other stuff. It's just easier just to keep the foreign workers there and let the Americans go, and then rehire them if they can. And, it's also cheaper because as Ron Hira put in that last article he wrote about how the employers get to pay the foreign workers at a lower prevailing wage, or at a lower wage than the Americans, it's just cheaper. And with the employers going through all the things that we're all going through with money, right now it benefits the employers. So we have a very precarious situation where a lot of Americans are calling me and saying, we have a whole group of us that are fired, not one foreigner got fired. And it's happening a lot in a lot of companies all over the country. And it's a sad situation because this is America. So why are we the ones that have to suffer? And it's a flaw in the system, because, is the employer at fault for not wanting to do all that paperwork and not wanting to have to fight immigration and wanting to save money on the cheaper workers? Maybe, but I think it's the government who's not paying attention to that and saying, okay, how do we fix that? I know, let's bring in more. Let's just bring more in, and let's just have more Americans out of work, which is what's going on right now.
Right. And, after a while, when you go down all of these rabbit holes about how these things work, it does become a question, is this a bug or a feature?
Right.
And you have tried to wage these battles in court, and it's another rigged playing field. Can you let some of the listeners and viewers who might not be familiar with your work in that area know what that was like and what has happened with some of those battles?
Well, naively, when I first started with the Disney case, I thought, this is awful. How in the world is this even legal? It's illegal by employment law, because it's national origin discrimination. It's illegal by immigration. And I fought it on every battle and realized it's actually not. It's actually legal, and it's actually the system has been put together so that these situations can happen, where companies actually have the legal right, and based on our government system, that they get to fire thousands of Americans, force them to train foreigners from different countries, mainly India, to do the work, and then all the Americans get fired. Why do any of these Americans train them? That's the question. Like, why would you train your replacement? Well, it's 3 more months of work. You don't get a severance if you don't train them. They're put in a situation where they don't know what to do. It's sprung on them. Like, within the next day, they get all this new, now you got to train, now you got to do this. And it's an emotional toll that I can't understand because I've never been through it. So back to the question of legal, I also tried a RICO claim thinking, well, if they're all coming together, because not only is it the base American company, there's also outsourcing companies that come in and they all work together in these different ways that can help get past some of these employment laws or immigration laws. It still didn't work. It was all legal. And there are exceptions. There are companies like Intel and IBM, who we think are American companies, who do this on their own, Microsoft, companies like that. But there is a business model for other companies, like what AT&T does is outsource it to a third party outsourcing company and let them do the dirty work.
Right, right. So, there was that golden moment around the time of the campaign and the recognition by candidate Trump of the harm that was being done to all these American workers. Several of them jumped on the Trump bandwagon and, in fact, were put on the stage. And he explicitly promised to remember them, to do something for them. What's happened since? Where are we, Sara?
Well, Senator Sessions at the time and Stephen Miller, who worked for him at the time, they taught me so much when I was just starting. And Stephen Miller especially, he was brilliant on these issues and brought me in and taught me so much. And then when we were speaking at the Trump rallies, there was the Disney workers and myself. We would speak at the Trump rallies. We would meet with President Trump. He was like literally writing things down that I was telling him. He was just so, visibly paying attention to what is happening to American workers. I can say one thing. He loves America and he loves American workers. That I don't doubt.
Yeah.
But after the election, I'm not really sure, because there are so many simple, easy things that are so, like, how can that, like an OPT program, how is that beneficial to Americans at all, old or young, graduating or retiring? It's a bad system for everyone. It doesn't make any sense. And honestly, if Obama can change it from 1 year to 3 years, and he has that kind of executive power, then why can't the next president who likes the program make it forever? What's the difference? So is that even in their power to do that? And so I thought those were things that were going to happen immediately. And then I thought it would happen within a year, 2, 3. And now it's like, okay, those obviously.
Hello, TikTok.
Yeah. And then, of course, the H-4 program, things like that aren't really controversial if you're paying attention and you really explain it to the American people as to what it is and how it harms America.
Can you do that? Can you do that real quickly for people? And we touched on it, but
H-4 is, President Obama came in and gave all of the spouses of H-1B workers the right to work. So to get an H-1B visa, you have to qualify. Your employer has to qualify. Everybody has to fill out these documents. It's a lottery system, and then you get the visa, and then you come in, and now your wife or husband get to work and do anything they want, wherever they want. And, most of the time they will take lower amount of money. But it's not just that, it's the number of new workers in the workforce that are competing with American workers. And no one gets to talk about it. No one got to discuss whether it was beneficial to Americans. And it just happened. So now it's, grown to so many H-4 visas that, we have a lot of people coming in from foreign countries that don't qualify for anything. They just get to work because their spouse is on H-1B. And even if, let's say, people decide that that's what they want, I just think America should know about it. They should talk about it, and they should decide, is this something that is beneficial to our country, to our people? And then if that's what they decide, then, I will concede. But I just don't think that people really understand it. And I think it's something President Trump could have jumped on and said, American workers first. Is this harming the American worker from getting a job? Is this lowering our wages because they're taking lower wages? And questions like that, and then make the decisions from there.
Yeah, that's what's most outrageous. There was no transparency, there was no debate, there was no input from the elected officials that we send to Washington to protect American interests and American workers. All of this done by administrative fiat under Obama. And you would think, among the circles that I'd traveled in for the last 20, 25 years, your rank and file, limited government conservatives, this is outrageous. I mean, this is how OPT was created. This is how H4EAD was created. And it's exactly the kind of thing that should have been considered low-hanging fruit. Oh, well, there wasn't even any debate on it. There wasn't a vote. There wasn't, a single hearing on it. Of course we should repeal it.
And within Obama's power to create that. And if it was, then what about students? F1 visa, if you come in on an F1 student visa, you're not allowed to work. Well, I mean, I'm going to say you can work. What about any other visa where you can't work? Well, I'm going to say you can work. So now whoever becomes president has the power to do all of this all over. And now, well, how did that start? Oh, well, Obama did it. And President Trump didn't say, you know what? Too far. I think he didn't have that power. And so I'm going to take that back, not based on immigration, really, but based on, separation.
Right. At the beginning of the week, I spoke with a young, really brilliant reporter, Pedro Gonzalez, and we talked about the impact that Jared Kushner has had, obviously, because this is where all of the internal swamp wars are going on. And yesterday, there was a piece in, I can't remember if it was BuzzFeed or Politico or one of these pieces. Anyway, it mentioned that Derek Lyons, who had been tapped as the purported domestic policy chief, was actually going to be moved now to counselor and has some sort of mysterious expanded role. And instead, they're installing a woman named Brooke Rollins as the domestic policy chief. I don't know if you saw this, but I'd followed her over the years. She's from Texas. She worked for a Koch-funded think tank, libertarian think tank called the Texas Public Policy Foundation, sidled up to Jared Kushner. And in 2013, this is what she was saying about guest worker programs. So the Texas Observer had asked her, that's a liberal publication in Texas, we've touched on the idea of a guest worker program for unskilled labor, but on the other side of the skill spectrum, do you see us expanding the number of visas for highly skilled workers? And this was her answer. Yes, that, I think, is the easy solution. I don't know of anyone who was against that. Republicans, Democrats, educated, not educated, blue collar, white collar. And now this woman is going to be the engineer, the woman driving the policy bus for the Trump administration, representing everything that, that's not what I voted for when I voted for Trump. I don't know about you. You've had a lot of dealings, and you referenced, dealing with Sessions and Miller. What's happening inside, even the West Wing? It's not other agencies battling within the administration. It's within the West Wing itself.
Well, I think we have the reality of what's happening with our economy, what's happening with immigration, where we were before President Trump, where we are now. I think we have that reality. And then we have what's happening and what's happened with the Trump administration. And I think one of the things is, we heard a lot of words, but, you can always tell someone by their actions, not by their words.
Right.
And I think that we look at who's being appointed where, Chad Wolf and, like you said, Ms. Rollins, and what Kushner's role is in everything. And you just say, okay, what are the actions showing us, or inactions showing us? And what does that mean for the upcoming election? Like, what are we going to, because that was really important to the voters of what President Trump was going to do with putting Americans first. Make America great again, Americans first. So that was really an important part. So we just, I think it's important to look at the actions and the words and really try to separate them from each other. Now, one of the things I think was important was on Laura Ingraham. President Trump, when asked about it, said, look, if you graduated from Harvard, I think then, if that's your opinion, then let's limit it. Anybody that graduated from Harvard, And with a master's degree, you get an H-1B. Anybody else? No. No, that's not what we're saying. That's not what we mean. So I think one of the problems with her, what she said is, of course, it's not true, because there are a lot of people saying,
yeah, that's right.
Cutting out the entire middle class. I mean, you're saying you graduated from college, or if you have a master's degree or anything else, then, we're going to add competition to you. But, lower skilled, we have issues with. So we got the lower class, we have issues, high class, but the middle class, we're again putting competition. And where is the representative of that middle class? And I don't know, who is that representative of the middle class?
Yeah, I saw a tweet from you that I wanted to bring up about Facebook. Oh, and I know I want to get you started on that. Before I do that, though, you had a tweet about the AT&T president, Randall Stevenson. You wrote, fires thousands of American workers, sends them to outsourcing companies to train foreigners in the country and outside the country to do the jobs. Those jobs are gone forever. And now he gets the boot and bank. And this is in response to a story reporting that he's retiring with $274,000 a month for life.
Seriously. I mean, I don't know if he was, and if it was the intention for him to be gone, or if this was new, but, he had, for years, AT&T has been doing this business model of forcing Americans to train foreigners. They claim they don't do it. They do it within the company, and they also make those contracts where, you have to go to the other company and then you do the dirty work at the other company. They're sending a lot of work offshore to India and other countries, but a lot to India. And you're forced to train people. Now, one of the things that they've done since the Tucker Carlson show is you don't train the foreigner. You train an American at this other company who trains the foreigner. So they've added like this little in between, which isn't going to last long because it's going to cost them extra money. But as a result, or just because it was his time, and Randall Stevenson gets the boot. But, you cut all that because you needed to cut costs, because you needed to save money. And if that's the case, then why are you getting so much money on your way out? Like, I just don't think it is fiscally responsible. I think it's showing disrespect to all the Americans who got zero or getting zero on their way out. Not only getting zero, but are forced to train a foreigner to do their job. I think it's atrocious and disrespectful.
Yeah. A lot of these so-called American companies act in everybody's interest except for America's. And here's the Facebook tweet that I mentioned. The New York Times had reported a couple of weeks ago that Facebook had made its largest single investment by putting $5.7 billion into a company called Geo Platforms of India, an enormous bet on the developing market and a sign of how large tech companies are forging ahead in the pandemic. And your response to that news?
Well, one way you save money on labor is pay $9,000 a year to people in India. And it's been going on for 30, 35 years. And it's what these companies are doing. They're sending as much as they can to foreign countries where they can pay very little. And a majority of it goes to India. And, one of the things that we saw in, the beginning of this coronavirus is, what if China has everything we need and now we're not trading with them? What are we going to do if we don't actually make masks? We don't actually make ventilators. What are we going to do if everything is in China that's manufactured? Well, we have the same problem with everything technology. I mean, everything that can be done over a computer, that can be done, live, that can be done through a phone, anything that can be done electronically is being done in India. And what happens when India gets mad and shuts us down? Or what if they decide, give us this, or we're going to shut you down? And it gives them a lot of power over us. And so no one's, that I know of, monitoring that situation, because each company gets to make their own decision of what they're going to send out. So what all is over there? And what kind of control do they have over our country at this point? I think it's pretty large.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it was played out and illustrated, I think, a little bit over a month ago. Because remember that right around the time this pandemic was really coalescing, Trump was in India, right? And
Yeah.
Modi, he filled a whole entire stadium of these cheerleaders for him. But it's like, well, for us, the question was, well, what are they going to get out of it? What do they want? And the Indian press was full of stories about the pressure to preserve H-1B and that pipeline for India. And then secondly, I think a week after Trump came home, India was going to block exports of hydroxychloroquine to our country. And then all of a sudden there were little, back channel discussions and oh, thank you, India, for freeing up the hydrochloroquine. I mean, it's pathetic. This is not America First. This is not MAGA. This is not CAG. It's not any of those things. It's frightening, just like you're saying.
I wrote an article on my website about Boeing. And one of the things I learned in researching that is Boeing got like the largest India government contract ever to make airplanes and airplane parts and all of these things. And so they started shipping and all of our jobs over there. And, all of a sudden, most of the Boeing work that was in America turns out to be sent to India. Well, what's happening is, the country is getting a lot of our jobs. And not only that, like I was saying about my son's homework, I did the English part because I love English. Math, my daughter had to help because I cannot do math. With math, you start out with 1 + 1, and then you get to multiplications. And then if you don't start out with 1 + 1, you build on it. Technology, in my mind, because I'm not a tech, but it seems that way, like you can't start with the complicated, you got to start down low and grow. So if we're offshoring all the work over there and giving it to foreigners here in America, and all of our Americans are losing that growth, we cannot just jump in over that. We're literally giving away our technology to a foreign country. And one day when people say there aren't any Americans to do the job, they're going to be right, because we're not going to be the top. We're not going to be the best. We're going to be, well, at least under India for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to make sure that people know about the new book that you've written and why you wrote it and what you hope to accomplish. It's called My Sold Out Life. Tell us more about that.
Well, because you wrote The Amazing Sold Out, which tells everything, all the actual real stuff. I wrote My Sold Out Life because over the years, I've spoken to thousands or hundreds of thousands of Americans going through this business model. And maybe 5 have been willing to speak out because they're all afraid to speak out. But I've heard the same story over and over. And even just yesterday, had a woman messaging saying, I'm getting counseling. This has been so emotionally hard for me to train my foreign replacement. I've had divorces, suicides. Like, it affects people in such a way that I don't understand, but I've been hearing so much. And the business model is pretty much the same. It changes a little bit from company, but mostly it's the same. Mm-hmm. So this is a fiction book based on reality. It's a story of a woman who is forced to train a foreign replacement, what it's like for her throughout the company, throughout the 90 days of training, where she goes next, what happens to her. She has to go to India to train people in India, which happens to a lot of people. Oh, yeah. So it's just like telling the real story and giving voice to the thousands of Americans who are afraid to speak out. And I hope that when they read it, they get comfort in knowing that this is something that others have gone through and that they understand. And I hope when other Americans read it, they think, oh my God, this could never happen. This really can't be true. And then at the end, I have 3-4 pages per person of American workers who are explaining exactly what happened to them. And they've never read my books. So it's like, it goes with exactly what happens in the book.
It sounds so necessary to bring that voice, and you're right. The message to all of these millions of American workers is so important that you're delivering, which is you are not alone. You are
Right.
not alone. And the psychological toll, the mental toll, like you said, the toll it takes on a family and on a marriage. And, there's a gaslighting that goes on, that term where you feel like you doubt reality because of all
Yeah.
of the people around you telling you that what you believe is not true, what you're experiencing is not true. And I blame the media for so much of this. And I mentioned this yesterday, and it's something that I've encountered for as long as I've been dealing with these issues, which is we have an American press that cares about everybody else except for Americans. Wow, isn't that coincidental? It's just like all of these American companies, the same mindset, the same anti-American mindset. I mean, to me, especially in the wake of this pandemic, this is a story, and these stories should be highlighted every single day. But instead, I mentioned this yesterday too, the New York Times had some sob story about someone married to a temporary visa holder who was not going to be able to get married, whatever. It's like, really, that's who you're shedding tears for? I just don't get it. So Sara, I thank you for everything that you're doing. And I urge people to visit, and let me get the website up here one more time, protectusworkers.com. And like you mentioned, you've got people all the time contacting you with stories. So I want to urge folks who are fearful, who have a story that they want to share, to reach out to Sara. She really is like I said, the central nervous system and of organizing and networking with people. And really, like I said, I think you're the godmother, the guardian angel and you've done so much to, I think, to inspire other people to start their own grassroots campaigns and all this. So, and I love you. I just love you.
I love you. You're so adorable.
Thanks for spending time with us, and we'll do it again.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.